You're watching All 24 News World News Program, broadcasting to you live from the capital. Here's the headlines. Hamas wants the ceasefire monitored, while the UN warns that closed crossings are limiting vital aid to Gaza, and UNRWA calls for free access to relief supplies. Also coming up tonight, a new UN decision is a setback for Morocco in Western Sahara, a move the Polisario Front calls a victory for their cause, as European groups also criticize the EU stance on the issue. And Trump wants a summit with Putin. The EU is cautiously supportive, while Zelensky claims new weapons talk spurred Russia to dialogue. Welcome back. First off, in on news tonight, Hamas on Friday urged the swift formation of a National Community Support Committee of independent figures to help manage Gaza and oversee the full withdrawal of the occupation forces. The movement also called on mediators to ensure the ceasefire terms are fully implemented and that sufficient humanitarian aid reaches the besieged enclave.
We call on everyone to continue their efforts in support of the Palestinian people, including the mediators, by completing their role in following up on the implementation of the remaining provisions of the agreement, especially those related to the entry of aid in the required quantities, the provision of all essential needs for citizens in the Gaza Strip, the opening of the Rafah crossing in both directions for citizens, and the urgent commencement of reconstruction, particularly of residential homes, infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and public service institutions, as well as those in solidarity campaigns and popular movements supporting our cause. The movement also stresses the immediate initiation of the formation of the Social Support Committee, composed of the group of independents who were nationally agreed upon, so that it may begin its work in the administration of the Gaza Strip alongside the completion of the withdrawal of occupation forces from the agreed-upon locations.
U.S. President Donald Trump acknowledged the dire situation in Gaza, expressing hope that Hamas would honor its commitments. Speaking at a White House press conference on drug prices, he said Washington is closely monitoring developments, noting that the situation in the Strip has recently calmed. The UN World Food Programme warned that delaying the reopening of Gaza's northern crossings is hindering aid delivery to the most vulnerable areas. WFP spokesperson Bir Atifa said fighting famine in Gaza will take time, urging the immediate opening of all crossings. She added that 5 food distribution centers are currently operating, with plans to expand to 145 to meet urgent needs across the devastated Strip. On Friday, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, demanded an unlimited and continuous flow of aid into Gaza, stressing that this support must continue until the territory's agricultural sector is rebuilt. It also emphasized that aid delivery should not be restricted to only UNRWA and major international NGOs. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza Strip said the Zionist occupation committed heinous crimes against martyr prisoners, including the theft of body organs such as corneas, kidneys, and livers. In a statement, the ministry said only 6 of 120 recovered bodies had been identified, noting that many showed signs of mutilation and close-range execution. It called for an independent UN committee to investigate the grave violations of human dignity and international law.
The Zionist occupation looted organs from the bodies of martyrs such as corneas, kidneys, and livers. We were shocked by the condition of the bodies of the martyrs, who were subjected to severe torture, some of whom were shackled. The families have identified 6 martyrs so far, out of a total of 120 bodies we have received. The dogs of the occupation forces ravaged the bodies of many of the martyrs recovered from the rubble. Autopsy tests revealed that some of the martyrs were executed at close range, while others were left to bleed to death. We demand the formation of an independent UN committee to investigate the circumstances of the abuse of the martyrs and their bodies.
Exhausted by the occupation's genocide, Palestinians are reeling from the bitterness of loss 2 years after Zionist aggression that destroyed everything in the Gaza Strip. The issue of the bodies of unidentified martyrs has come to the fore after the occupation obliterated their features by torturing them to death. Wissam Ayadi has the story.
After a long wait and after the sound of the bombing subsided, the martyred prisoners returned to their land, but with unknown identities. Here in Gaza, another journey of suffering begins. It is the pain of families deprived of bidding farewell to their martyrs, burdened with the pain of loss, war, and displacement, searching among the bodies of martyrs by the occupation on their sons, contemplating futures distorted by torture.
The Red Cross has brought bodies, 90 bodies, and we have come to see if he is with them or not. The appearance of the martyrs, we do not know who they are, because they are disfigured and the Jews have tortured them. We don't know anything about them. Their appearance, we don't know where is my husband. We don't know where my husband is. It is not known.
Added to the family's tragedy is the suffering of doctors exhausted by the journey to identify the martyrs using simple means, hoping to extinguish a fire burning in the hearts of the thousands of families who have lost their sons.
In terms of identifying and confirming the bodies, we try in all ways, but our means are primitive, and we rely on identifying them through their relatives only, not through scientific means. We do not have DNA or equipment or specialized examinations or laboratories.
Bodies crushed by the wheels of occupation tanks, others mangled by its dogs, their organs looted, and some bodies shackled and bearing signs of torture and burns. According to international organizations, this represents one of the most heinous, unprecedented crimes committed by the occupation in history. The occupation did not hide its crimes against Gazan prisoners. Rather, it deliberately displayed them, boasting of its brutality before the world in an effort to strip the dignity of the Palestinian human being, even as a martyr.
The United Nations urged all parties in Gaza to put human rights at the center of recovery and peace efforts, ensuring the ceasefire leads to lasting stability. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk stressed the need for Palestinians to take part in shaping their governance and called for accountability for the grave violations committed over the past 2 years.
At this critical stage, all hands on deck are needed to ensure this momentum carries through to a lasting peace and security for all those living in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. Much needs to be done. It will take tremendous efforts and the goodwill of all those involved in this conflict and the international community to foster conditions for peace, justice, and reconciliation.
South Africa reaffirmed that the Gaza ceasefire does not erase crimes against civilians and that its genocide case against the occupation at the International Court of Justice remains valid. The Foreign Ministry said the move reflects South Africa's historic fight against apartheid and commitment to justice, stressing that accountability must stand above temporary developments on the ground. Moving on to a different matter now, Ambassador Sidi Mohammed Omar, the Polisario Front's representative to the UN, hailed the UN Fourth Committee's recent resolution, reaffirming that Western Sahara remains a decolonization issue. Speaking to All 24 News, he said, the decision is a clear response to the Moroccan occupation's propaganda and attempts to distort the issue's international nature through misinformation and illicit pressure on some countries.
كونه يأتي في هذا الوقت فهو يشكل رداً واضحاً وقوياً.
Coming at this time, it constitutes a clear and powerful response to the Moroccan occupation state's propaganda and its attempt to distort this legal framework for the Sahrawi issue. This is a clear decision. It unequivocally confirms the historical and international expectations regarding the Sahrawi issue as a colonial issue. It emphasizes and demonstrates the responsibility of the international organization to the Sahrawi people, and thus the necessity of empowering these people who are exercising their rights and are unable to act, compromise, or limit their rights and independence.
أو المساومة والتقادم في تقرير المصير والاستقلال.
The Sahrawi diplomats said the resolution reaffirms decades of UN decisions recognizing Western Sahara as a decolonization issue, confirming the Sahrawi people's inalienable right to self-determination and independence.
قرار لجنة الأمم المتحدة.
The UN Fourth Committee's decision to special political assistance and the end of the exploitation of the Western Sahara is an important decision because it confirms the international legal framework for the Western Sahara issue as a colonial issue, and what this means in terms of affirming the right of the Sahrawi people who have been subjected to dispossession to self-determination and independence in accordance with relevant General Assembly resolutions, specifically Resolution 1514, which includes a declaration of the urgent need for independence for the Sahrawi people and colonized peoples.
لإعلان منح الاستقلال للبلدان والشعوب المستعمرة.
59 European organizations rejected the new EU-Morocco trade deal covering products from occupied Sahrawi territories. In a petition to the European Commission, they condemned the agreement as a legal and moral breach that turns the EU from a defender of justice into a partner in violations.
"59 organizations from various European countries have signed a petition that will be addressed by the Observatory to the European Commission, expressing their rejection of the new trade agreement between the European Union and Morocco, which concerns products originating from Sahrawi territories under occupation. Most of these organizations are from Spain, Germany, France, Italy, Portugal, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Slovenia, and the signatures are still ongoing before the petition is submitted to the European Commission, in order to denounce this legal and ethical deviation that seeks to turn the European Union from a partner in justice into a party to violations.
At its 19th ministerial meeting in Kampala, the non-aligned movement reaffirmed its firm support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. In its final document, the movement backed UN efforts to achieve a political solution, ensuring that right, and underscored the UN's responsibility to complete Western Sahara's decolonization through negotiations between the two parties. At its 19th ministerial meeting in Kampala, the non-aligned movement praised President Abdelmadjid Tebboun's leadership in advancing African unity and championing just causes. The final document commended his role as the EU's counter-terrorism coordinator and his leadership for the African Peer Review Forum. The movement also welcomed his proposal for an African Day to honor the victims of colonialism and his plan to host an international symposium on colonial crimes. It further hailed his unwavering support for the Palestinian people in Algeria's diplomatic efforts at the UN Security Council. As the anniversary of October 17, 1961 massacres returns, the memory of those horrific atrocities resurfaces when French colonial forces brutally crushed peaceful Algerian demonstrators in Paris. The tragedy has now prompted French lawmakers to propose a motion classifying the massacre as a state crime for which Paris must take full responsibility. Marwa Bil'aour has the story.
After decades of denial and attempts to erase the evidence, France is once again confronted with one of the darkest chapters of its colonial past. The October 17, 1961 massacre, when French police brutally repressed peaceful Algerian demonstrators in Paris under the orders of police chief Maurice Papon, notorious for his brutality. Thousands were killed, disappeared, or detained. Men, women, and even children in what remains a full-fledged state crime France long tried to bury. But 64 years later, the memory has resurfaced, with members of the French National Assembly calling on their government to take full responsibility and officially recognize the massacre as a crime d'État, rather than pinning it solely on Papon. The proposed resolution goes further, urging the October 17 be marked as a national day of remembrance in France to pay tribute to the victims and acknowledge the historical truth long denied by successive governments.
We call on the French government to publicly acknowledge the full responsibility of the French state for the massacres of October 17, 1961, recognizing them as a state crime that cannot be limited to the responsibility of the then police prefect, Maurice Papon. We demand that this date be included in the French Republican calendar as an official national day to commemorate the victims and to affirm the truth about those events that were denied for decades.
As calls grow louder within France itself, the pressure mounts on Paris to face its colonial past. The crimes committed against peaceful Algerian demonstrators, including the internment of more than 1,500 women and children in psychiatric hospitals and detention camps, remain an open wound. For Algeria, the memory file remains non-negotiable, a moral duty that time and denial can no longer silence.
Switching focus to the war in Sudan, the Sudanese army said it repelled the violent attack by the Rapid Support Forces in the besieged city of Al-Fashir, killing dozens of fighters and destroying their equipment. Army spokeswoman Asya Al-Khalifa told All24 News that troops launched a pre-dawn operation targeting RSF rocket launchers used against civilians in residential areas.
The command of the 6th Infantry Division succeeded in repelling a violent attack launched by the terrorist militia on the city of Al-Fashir, using infantry and combat vehicles from the northeastern and western axis. Our forces inflicted heavy losses in equipment and personnel, destroying 10 combat vehicles, including armored carriers, and seizing 2 land cruiser vehicles fully equipped with their gear, while the remaining attackers fled outside the city. We confirm that the situation is now fully under the control of our forces.
The One World Food Programme warned that Al-Fashir is facing severe hunger, calling the situation intolerable. WFP Executive Director Cindy McCain said residents are resorting to eat animal feed as food supplies run out and aid convoys remain blocked. She urged immediate access for relief deliveries, noting that all community kitchens have stopped operating. The Sudanese army said it launched surprise operations across several fronts, killing senior leaders of the Rapid Support Forces. Military sources told All24 News that the strikes targeted RSF gatherings, killing the commander of the South Kordofan Axis, his 2 aides, and dozens of fighters. The operations, they added, were in response to the RSF attacks and aimed at restoring stability in the region and across Sudan. Moving on to another topical development, at the White House on Friday, Ukrainian President Zelensky met with President Trump in high-stakes meeting focused on long-range Tomahawk missiles and the future of the war in Ukraine. With tensions rising, Trump's cautious stance on the missiles contrasted with Zelensky's urgent push for military aid. This comes a day after both Trump and Putin discussed an upcoming meeting in Hungary. Nabil Khazina reports.
On Friday morning, the White House was the stage for a high-stakes meeting that could shape the future of the war in Ukraine. Inside the White House, the atmosphere was charged. For Zelensky, it was a crucial moment. The Tomahawk missiles, capable of striking deep, could shift the balance of power in the ongoing conflict. Ukraine has long pushed for these weapons, hoping to gain an edge as Russian forces continue their advance.
Of course, we want to finish this war, but the war is another technological war. You don't use just tomahawks. If you want to target a military goal, you need thousands of drones. It goes together with such missiles. Ukraine has such thousands of our production drones, but we don't have tomahawks. That's why we need tomahawks.
However, Trump appeared wary of the potential escalation the missiles could cause.
Tomahawks are very dangerous weapons. They're incredible weapons. If you like warfare, it's one of the most accurate. You know, we hit 30 Tomahawks in Iran after the B-2s did their damage. We sort of gave it a little capper with 30 Tomahawks from a submarine, quite far away actually, but they're an amazing weapon. They're a very powerful weapon, but they're a very dangerous weapon, and it could mean big, escalation. It could mean a lot of bad things can happen. Tomahawks are a big deal.
2, 1.
Supplying Tomahawks missiles to Ukraine would significantly expand its strike capabilities, enabling it to hit targets deep inside Russian territory that are currently beyond reach. Just a day before his meeting with Zelensky, Trump had spoken with Putin. After that conversation, Trump announced that the two leaders had agreed to meet in Hungary in the coming weeks to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. The stage was being set for a crucial diplomatic moment, despite the timing remained uncertain. The Kremlin said the summit could take place within 2 weeks, though there were still details to be worked out before a final date could be set.
Similarly, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Moscow swiftly signaled readiness to resume talks after reports that Kyiv might obtain long-range Tomahawk missiles. Speaking ahead of his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington, he stressed that a firm stance can work with Russia, citing recent developments in the Middle East as proof. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said Moscow and Kyiv are still not ready to reach a settlement to end their conflict. In a media interview, he noted that despite the U.S. President's diplomatic efforts, a deal remains out of reach, as neither side is yet prepared to compromise. Moving on to a different matter, Reuters reported Friday, citing Pakistani security officials, that 7 soldiers were killed and 13 wounded in an attack near the Afghan border amid a temporary truce between the two countries. Gunmen targeted an army camp in North Waziristan, detonating a car bomb at the camp's wall before 2 attackers tried to storm the site and were shot dead. The Director of Public Health in Afghanistan's Spin Boldak district near the Pakistani border said Pakistani airstrikes killed 40 people and injured 170. Afghan media reported that artillery fire from Pakistan also damaged civilians' homes in other several districts. According to Reuters reports, citing Pakistani security officials and Taliban sources, Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed Friday to extend their ceasefire by 48 hours ahead of planned talks in Doha. The sources said a Pakistani delegation has already arrived in the Qatari capital, with an Afghan delegation expected on Saturday.
Both sides are making sincere efforts to find a positive resolution to this complex but solvable issue through constructive dialogue. Pakistan greatly values dialogue and diplomacy and a mutually beneficial relationship with Afghanistan.
Pakistani authorities said they are working sincerely with the Afghan Taliban to find a constructive solution to the ongoing crisis. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Shafqat Ali Khan told reporters that Pakistan values dialogue and diplomacy to strengthen ties with Afghanistan. describing the Taliban's recent attacks as unjustified and harmful to neighborly relations. And finally, in CAF Champions League action, Algeria's GS Kabylie took a major step toward the group stage with a decisive 3-0 first leg victory over Tunisia's US Monastir. After a goalless first half, Mahdi Margham broke the deadlock in the 49th minute with a powerful long-range strike. Lahlu Akhrib doubled the lead in the 64th minute on a counter-attack before Babakar Sarr sealed the valuable victory with a third goal in the 89th minute. The return leg is scheduled for the 25th of this month. And that brings us to the end of our news program for tonight. For the latest updates, you can always visit our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in and have a great night.